Welcome to This Team Is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. I'm Demetri. She is Lauren Brownlow. And Lauren, what is killing me today, aside from literally the last stages of fighting off before I think the flu overwhelms me, is that I don't know the right way to contextualize Shaq Thompson's time with the Panthers, because I was not the fan that I am now for the last 10 years. I certainly am not the fan you are for the last 10 years. To me, this is a very cold business decision, but I do want to hear your emotional take on us being out of our Shaq Thompson era.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, he came to the Panthers during obviously like a great time in the franchise. And sadly for him, that was pretty short-lived.
Right.
It did not last long. And he has, stuck it out and not really complained a lot through a lot of the sads here. So like as a fan, I certainly appreciate that. Like, I wouldn't be happy if I were him about, being here in this situation, and he's never complained, but like, and obviously he's great. Like, he was a really good player. And, back in the day when he was back there with like Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly, like that was just an unbelievable linebacking core, and it was awesome to have all three of them. And I think that was his rookie season. I want to say it was not far into his career.
His rookie season is the year they went to the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's what I was thinking about. It was like Thomas Davis, that trio, and they were a trio for a little bit longer too. But like, that was the year I was thinking of, and that was his rookie year. He must have thought, "Wow, it's great here." Well,
yeah, I mean, look, I think that you fast forward to the last 2 years. He's played 6 games in 2 years. He's going to be 30. Like, again, like I said, this feels like a cold business decision. I think that where this will be interesting, and look, maybe they've seen enough in these last 2 years to feel like
or not seen enough,
or not seen enough, right? Like, they can move forward knowing that the things that are still in that locker room, because Shaq spent time with Luke, spent time with Thomas Davis, either don't have the effect they once did or weren't getting through to these guys in the first place. I mean, look, the last 2 years have not been good, and that's not a reflection of Shaq at all. That is more of a reflection of even someone of that character can't really do much when the talent drops off like that. So I don't know. Like, I think it is not a move that caught anybody by surprise, but it is a significant move.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't many. Is he the last one? He might be close to it. Maybe JJ Jansen, technically.
Yeah, that's who it is. It's JJ Jansen is now the only link back to the Super Bowl team.
And do we really count long snappers? No offense.
Lauren had the exact same thought. Does that mean anything if the lone link is the long snapper?
I mean, it means something to like me, but I don't know that it would mean something to, So, I mean, it's not like JJ Jansen's giving some fire up speech about like, this is what we did in 2015, I mean, maybe he is. I don't know.
I mean, I was
what
going
do
to say,
I know, right?
And if he is, how is such a thing
happening,
received in the locker? Or happening? That's even better. How is such a thing allowed to happen in the world of a just and honorable God?
I think it's a lot more about his inability to stay healthy these last couple of years.
For sure.
And like, I guess that's technically the cold part of it. At the same time, like, I mean, this team certainly defensively, especially, just doesn't really have the luxury of keeping guys on its roster that they don't know for sure will be available for them to play.
Well, and the other part too is like, and I don't think this is insignificant. He was brought in to play a 4-3, and now the team plays a 3-4. I think that Josie Jewell has very much locked up his position as a starter in the middle. And I mean, I think Trevin Wallace did enough to at least earn a shot.
Yeah, he played well.
Yeah, like if you have Trevin Wallace on your roster, you can justify letting go of a Shaq Thompson that you don't know if you're going to have from week to week. So, I think the overall situation made the math simple if the emotion is not necessarily that simple. Like, I don't think he's done. I don't think Shaq Thompson's career is over. I think he's probably going to end up. Yeah, I think he's going to end up in the same situation, that Clowney and Wanham did last year. The hell, like a guy like Josh Sweat ended up in this situation. You saw the season he had in Philadelphia. It's probably going to be late in the free agency process, and someone's going to bring him in on a deal. Lauren, I have a name that I've been thinking about a lot that is going to make you very unhappy. He seems like an ideal fit at a bargain basement rate for New Orleans. He really does. They have no money, and I don't think he can command much money, but it is like a, hey, look, we're doing something kind of move.
Wait, what's the name?
Oh, I'm saying New Orleans. Shaq Thompson to New Orleans.
I thought you were saying someone from New Orleans.
No.
Yeah, got it. No, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much when former Panthers come to play or go to play there as it does when, and this is going to sound unhinged, but bear with me. I know, as it does when former Saints come to play here. Because
you don't feel like we got one over on them?
No, I think they're moles. Especially when Sean Payton was still there. Like,
right.
You don't understand how long it took me to warm up to Captain Munnerlyn because of that. Like, I was like, you're a mole, you're a spy, you're sent here to sabotage from the inside. I know it's unhinged behavior by me. I recognize that in myself. It does not stop the intrusive thoughts. However, so yeah, I mean, look, he's got to play somewhere. I hope for his sake he can land with a team because the Saints aren't projected to be a hell of a lot better than the Panthers. So, and probably worse, maybe worse, so like, I would hope for his sake that he could land with somebody that, has a chance to, get him back to a Super Bowl. I think that would be awesome.
It hurts me to say this because he's a Bama guy, but I think Roman Harper is the guy that most fits your.
Roman Harper's who I was thinking of. I don't know why I was thinking of Captain Munnerlyn.
No, I mean, like,
sorry, Captain.
Like, I get that Roman stayed in Charlotte, but he was a Saint for a long time and a Panther for a year and then decided to retire. God. Very suspicious.
I blanked. It was Captain Munnerlyn was on my brain with the captain check down or with the, whatever he said about Jimmy Clausen that made me laugh so much. Yes, because I was like, I miss him. Like, I missed his quip. So it wasn't Captain. It was, I'm so sorry, Captain. It was Roman Harper. We're both in the defensive backfield still. Yep. Inexcusable error on my phone. Yeah, Roman Harper was the one. And I always thought he was, because he was in New Orleans for a long time. So that was part of it. Yes. So I was like, you are still loyal to them. I don't trust you.
The NFL scouting combine is going on right now up in Indianapolis. Our friend from the women's basketball podcast, Mia O'Brien, is there because she also covers the Jaguars as part of another job she does. And I texted her yesterday, just jokingly, and said, hey, if any Panthers stories break, please let me know. And she said something that, like, I have thought from looking at a lot of not just mock drafts, but also reading the way the team is talking about their needs. She said that she got the very distinct feeling from watching the Panthers media corps that the team has already made up their mind that it is going to be JalonWalker, the middle linebacker from Georgia, who has some versatility, like can play on the outside, played both linebacker positions. But it's something that I have been wondering a little bit, like, as I see more and more talk about this guy, I wonder if Dan Morgan feels like that's his dude, if he has seen enough on tape to make him feel like that's my guy.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to really think of that. Like, technically, obviously, like, could help with the pass rush. Like, I understand that part of it. I think ideally you want to go D-end, but you can find ways to get your linebackers involved in the pass rush. I understand that part, but it's like, that was my only brief hesitation was like,
I think
what about that?
Here's my hesitation. And this is something that I was talking with Mia about because she covers the Panthers and remembers the Jalen, Oh, shoot, not Walker. Who was the one that got drafted first by the Jaguars a couple of years ago? Shoot.
I couldn't even remember Roman Harper's name, so I'm not going to be the one.
I can't remember his name. I'll look it up while we're talking. But another guy out of Georgia with that versatility of does he play? In his case, it was edge or defensive tackle. And so you draft him number one, and he ends up becoming a little bit more valuable to you as an interior lineman than as an edge. Now, that's not a wasted pick, and it's very different because it's the number one pick versus the number 8 pick. But I do sometimes wonder if valuing versatility means you are going to miss out on the absolute undeniable star. Like, I mean, Trayvon Walker was the guy's name. Trayvon Walker has been very good for the Jaguars, but you can't tell me they wouldn't rather have Aiden Hutchinson if they could do that again, right?
Right. Yeah. That's my thing, right? Is like it's cool that he's versatile and all, but like, where's the pass rush beast and or the lockdown DB that this team really needs, you know?
Agreed. And I think that if it is Walker, there does then bring up the possibility of, like, do you start talking about trading back? Because I don't think you would have to use a top 10 pick to get him. He's described as a character guy. Adam Schefter reported this week that he is, quote, nursing some things, which doesn't make me feel great, but also who isn't nursing some things at this point?
I'm starting to wonder in a way if, like, and I get it from Dan's perspective that I think Dan, and I'm not, maybe I shouldn't be too like overarching with this, but I wonder if Dan has a bit of a soft spot for guys that have had injury histories because he had his own, you know, issues with various things like during his career and would always fight hard to play through it and everything like that. But, you know, I'm sure there were question marks around him as a result of things like that. And maybe he has a soft spot for guys like that. And that would certainly explain the Jonathan Brooks pick, if nothing else.
Well, because, I mean, you know, there's another thing that I thought you were going to say. Does he have a little bit of a soft spot? Not for middle linebackers specifically, but for dudes that are in a position where they don't control the action, right? Like a middle linebacker is going to be relying a lot on what the line in front of him does. Xavier Liggett is going to depend a lot on Bryce's development, etc.
We usually, though, I'm not sure if it's different in the Panthers defense in particular, but generally speaking, the middle linebacker is sort of like the quarterback of the defense, or the signal caller, the brains of the defense, so to speak.
Yeah, so, it's pretty common, like right up the middle, that it's either going to be your middle linebacker or your safety that's making those calls. And safety, another position of need, and that's why. Like, all right, so here's a question you can answer better than I can. Is the most significant moment to ever happen at the combine for the Panthers Steve Smith finding out there that he is not coming back to the team?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know that. Yeah,
I don't remember Cam showing out in a way that, like, you know, there was this real pride of we have the number one pick and it's a no-brainer. So I think it's Steve Smith sort of finding out from an interview at the combine that he is not going to be returning to the Carolina Panthers.
Tough. You know, yeah. It's hard because, like, I have covered college basketball for a long time. And so this time of year, almost stubbornly on my part, but it's like, no, do not take my focus. College football, you already took my focus for a long time. NFL, I already watched you on the weekends.
Right.
And I would get so annoyed. I remember, like, at the Final Four just getting, like, pissed off because I'd be like, what? Stop news dropping. I'm busy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't pay attention to you right now. Like a needy child or something. Like, shut up for a little bit.
It is. So it will be going on through next weekend, I believe, into Tuesday of not next week, but the following week. I can't remember exactly the dates, but it's not good television by any stretch, but I do find myself
I used to watch it. Yeah.
Well, see, I'll say, like, I do find myself even like with the third day of the draft, like on Sunday, well, there's nothing else on and I've got nothing to do. And I end up watching, you know, offensive linemen run a 40 for whatever reason.
That's my favorite.
For an hour.
And defensive line. I was gonna say, if anything, I watch to see the big boys go do the drills. I love that. And not like I genuinely, because some of them are like so impressive. Like you're like, how are you moving like that with that weight on you? Like it's unreal.
I mean, the one that I think stands out to everybody is current Panther Jadeveon Clowney, like put on a show with his 40, because I think people saw those videos of him running track in high school and you dismiss it as it's high school, right? Any elite athlete is going to be better at anything than other kids in high school, and then you see him do it at the combine and you're like, oh, that speed is real. The other part of the combine that's really important is it's basically a GM convention, right? Everybody is there. And so if the Panthers do want to kick the tires on trading for, be it Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp or whoever it may be, and you're talking about what you can do with a third round or one of the 2 fourth-round picks, it's going to at least start to come together there. I was told one time, actually by Marty Herney, that there were other conversations that happen, and he didn't tell me if he ever sealed these deals, but he said, you do start to talk about contingency plans where if our pick comes up and prospect X is on the board, but prospect Y is not, then you already know who to call, who you have a deal or you have parameters of a deal in place with. So I do expect that Dan Morgan is going to be hearing from a lot of the wide receiver needy teams about who would have to be off the board for number 8 to be in play for us to trade up.
Yeah. And I mean, I was going to say, like, for me too, when you were mentioning that, like, who they want would be available later, first of all, it's not what you want to hear as a fan, because you're like, maybe pick someone that wouldn't be.
Right.
Just saying. Or like, I mean, I get what it's positions of need, blah, blah, blah. I understand all that. But at the same time, like, if you could like, I would like to hear about like someone that they would really love to get right there.
So like, here's where I would say, okay, I think that is the kind of thing exactly what you're talking about. Like, if you're not going to go get somebody that would be like the envy of the league, if you're so laser focused on what your need is or what your desire is, and that is Jalen Walker, and you think you can get Walker with a top 15 pick, like, the Colts are pretty target needy, and whether that is Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, or Ted McMillan, the receiver out of Arizona, if they want to move into the top 10 and you can get them to give up both their 1 and their 2 to make that happen, then I'm okay with whoever we end up with at 14.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I completely agree. But like, for me, it's also like, yeah, I would love to hear, because like when I'm hearing that that's who they might draft there and he would very reasonably go later, it's like, not loving that. Would love to hear like in your dream world, like, and the other thing too is like, we have to remember, and I'm not saying this is the case because like, obviously more than one person has been reporting this and whatever, but a lot, like, NFL teams really, this is another reason why I don't love to pay super close attention to it. NFL teams,
I know what you're about to say. And you're right.
Love to traffic and bullshit during this time. Just It's their favorite thing. It's like, oh, what can I float out there that someone will believe? And sometimes you just hear something and you're like, what? That doesn't make sense. Like, why would they do that? And you just never know. Like, you really don't know like what their actual intentions are. So it could be that like he's floating this and really has someone else in mind. But I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to remember like how many of the picks were like huge surprises. Necessarily.
Are you talking about the Panthers?
The Panthers, yeah.
So, who was the year after the draft after they won the Super Bowl? They drafted a defensive tackle out of Louisiana Tech. I cannot remember the guy's name, but I remember because we were working together at the time. And I remember you, me, and Mike on draft, because it was very late on draft night, but we had to stay up because the Panthers, were kind of what we did at that point. I remember all of us texting because it was right either after the Josh Norman deal happened or like it was clear it was about to happen, and we were flabbergasted by the fact that they didn't even bother to address the secondary. That was kind of Dave Gettleman's MO, right? Like, it didn't matter what you needed. Gettleman was always going to draft an interior lineman on one side of the ball or the other with his first pick.
Vernon Butler.
Vernon Butler, yes.
What happened to him?
Did he even play significant time for Carolina? I don't think he did.
Does it not appear? Oh, he got ejected in 2019 from. I mean, he stayed for a couple years with the Panthers.
Okay.
But in 2019, he was ejected after punching Jack Doyle of the Colts in a 38-6 loss. I don't know why I don't remember that. I've blocked out a lot of trauma.
I remembered him as like a troubled guy, and maybe he wasn't a troubled guy. It was just such a significant moment that I remember that, it's easy to think of him that way.
He signed with 3 teams after that, but like didn't really mostly practice squad-y type stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure because I was heavily pregnant at that time. So I'm sure that I was pretty pissed that I stayed up all night and was like, wait, what is this? What's happening? Like, what? Yeah. You did what? So, yeah.
that's true. You were like a month away from exploding at that point.
A couple months, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Listen, this show, every show on the OG Triangle Media Network, we thrive off of your word of mouth. So if you have not already taken the time to like and subscribe to this podcast, whether it is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform is, or just subscribe to the OG Triangle Media channel on YouTube. We need you to do that. It helps the algorithm tell people that our show, all of our shows, are worth investing in. So please take the time, like, subscribe, rate, review. I don't care if you give us 5 stars. I would hope you would want to give us 5 stars, but I'm not a bully. So do it now do it now on your podcast or YouTube platform of choice. Also, OGTriangleMedia.com for OG fans. That is where you sign up for our subscription service where you can read about Lauren Brownlow's rankings of the top 5 backup quarterbacks in Carolina Panthers history, making Steve Berline number 1. What was your criteria beyond eventually Steve Berline became a starter?
It not at all. It was more like, what did they do when they were called upon? And like, yes, I mean, the fact that obviously he went on to be a starter and like be pretty good factored in because I was looking at like career numbers and stuff. Yeah. And so it was hard. But really that was really the only time that happened with the Panthers, right. Long term. Like Jake was technically Rodney Pete's backup, but like from everything I understand about that situation, like Rodney had struggled a lot in preseason, and John Fox really liked Jake. And so like there was a lot of thought already that Jake was probably going to start. And like it did not take long in like week 1 before he ended up getting put. Like so he was barely even a backup, So it was I was surprised. I was surprised at my list.
You mentioned in the piece that Rodney Pete at number 5 you recognized was more of a sentimental thing, and you put that you could have picked Matt Moore there. And I was trying to rack my brain. Was Moore here before or after the experiment that he could be the full-time starter in Miami? After, right?
It was before.
Oh, was it?
I believe. I'm almost positive about that. Yes, because he was here for a while. And I remember there were a lot of people, myself included, that look, the backup's always the most popular guy. And if I'm not mistaken, he was backing up Jake. And Jake was starting to, I believe, I could be wrong about that. I think he was.
Maybe you're right. Like if the timing, because I seem to recall Matt Moore kind of stepping in during Saban's last season when Dante Culpepper couldn't stay healthy for the Dolphins.
Yes, it was definitely before the Dolphins. Yeah. I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, well, I think people thought like that was the thing with him is like people really thought that like he could be the next big thing, Right. I was one of those people. And he did well in like backup duty. And then when he was kind of pressed into more serious stuff, like it was just kind of meh, And then I actually was one of the people that was kind of like, well, then they re-signed Jake, so they let him walk, and it was like, and then when he played Miami, I was like, oh, good, okay. We weren't like missing a secret starter or anything.
Right. Sign up for OG fans at OGTriangleMedia.com. Lauren Brownlow, I am going to propose something I do not think will happen. It is not what I want to happen, but I do believe there is a non-zero chance that it could happen. What if I propose to you that amongst the things that could happen at the scouting combine, where every general manager is there together, is the seeds start to come together for a plan to trade JayceeHorn?
Does he come with more DBs back? Like, I mean, because like, look, I have been overall like lukewarm on JC throughout his career. Partially because, again, and I know it's not fair or nice, but like the injury stuff has been a thing with him. But yeah, this year has not been as much of this past year was not as much of an issue. He was healthy for most of the season.
Yep.
And they weren't like the same injury either. So like, it's not, it's not like, oh, it's the same thing over and over again. But I just remember, I think there was one season where his hamstring was constantly acting up, and it was like, is he going to play or isn't he? And it was just this constant thing. But this year it just didn't seem like that was as much of a thing. And he played really well. I just, that's a tough one because, like, you don't, I mean, if they can get a lot back, including a DB, since they're not apparently going to draft one first, look, that's just an enormous need. And to take JC out of that mix, like, makes it an even bigger one.
And this is why I don't think it will happen. It's not what I want to happen, but he is going to be playing. Well, all right. The team would like to get an extension done. If they cannot, he's going to be playing under his 5th-year option. It would cost the team $12.5 million. At least that would be the cap hit. Anything bonus-wise on top of that doesn't go towards the cap. My concern is if Patrick Surtain, if his deal is the guide, that is not rational. Like, if you're JayceeHorn's agent, you can make the argument that, oh, well, Surtain was taking a pick behind Horn. That has to be considered. But Surtain was in the mix, and maybe he did win. He did win Defensive Player of the Year this year. Like,
I was gonna say, I was like, not exactly.
Yeah, so I don't
No.
have any reason to think that JC is so illogical that that's going to be the guiding light. But you can't dismiss it, and if you don't see a way to get a deal done, the dude will never be more valuable than he is right now for everything you just said. He played 15 of 17 games this year. He turned in his first ever Pro Bowl performance. He hit career highs in pass breakups and tackles. Like, if he's going to be playing under the option anyway, and the risk is either you let him go, you let him walk, or you play him under the franchise tag next year, I think the Panthers would be fools not to figure out what are our options if we can't get this extension done.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Although, like, I guess it takes away a little. Yeah. If it takes away some leverage, if you're going to try to trade him, and everybody knows, like, you don't, you're trying to figure out a way to get out of the cap hit. So yeah, I mean, that does take away some of your leverage, I guess, if you're the Panthers a little bit, but at the same time, like, because he could just walk after next year. And so anybody that's interested could just be like, well, we'll just wait.
I kind of, so here is the thing that, like, I've been thinking about with that. And it comes back to the franchise tag, right? Like, football is a physical game, and even one more game could be the difference in how valuable you are to a potential suitor. Horn's injury history is exactly what you said it was. It's been what it's been, right? And it's not unfair to take that into account when you are talking about how much he either has or has not lived up to expectations. I think if a player says they want to be traded, like, this is not all of what's going on in San Francisco with Debo. Debo is also, has injury problems of his own, but everybody knows that San Francisco's not going to carry him on the roster, so they're not going to offer him much. I think JC is different. I don't know that you could get a pick and a starting caliber player for him, but if you can get if you can get a second-round pick for him, I mean, I think you have to, especially a high second-round pick, I think you really have to weigh, does keeping him help us more than whatever we could get there? I think it does, but again, it's a non-zero chance that you make that move.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be, like you said, the value's never been higher and everything. But at the same time, I'm just like, I get panicky about DBs because it's like, oh no, we don't have any.
Right.
Now
right.
what?
Right. I mean, and this is not a great draft for finding the next guy, right? Like I really like a guy I really like is Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. I think Maxwell will be a solid corner. That is not what Carolina needs. If they're drafting a quarterback, they need more than
right.
that.
And so that's part of the thought process, I'm assuming, in the fact that like they're not looking at a DB at 8 is because there's not a DB that would make sense to draft there.
I think there is. The problem is that dude is coming in with the same problems you've dealt with JayceeHorn. That's Will Johnson out of Michigan, who is, spent most of this year on the bench because of his injury problem.
Yeah.
Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame.
No offense.
Yeah, Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame is another one. Spent most of the year on the bench, but has all the talent in the world. You're right, Lauren. I mean, like, we know the defense has so many needs. I guess you can just sell the franchise on or sell the fan base on. We can't fix them all in one draft. But if the secondary does not get any attention and you're kicking around the idea of trading JC, like that's a non-starter, right?
I mean, I feel like, look, as sexy as Dan Morgan might find the linebacker position to be, I don't think it's unsexy necessarily, but like if you're trying to sell fans and be like, ooh, we did the here's the shiny object we just got for you all. To me, I'm going pass rusher and I'm getting the best guy that I can at that spot. And I'm like, look, this dude's going to go get after the quarterback. Like, forget these guys having all day to throw. Not going to happen. Like, whatever. Like, that's what I'm doing. If I'm if I'm trying to sell it, you know what I mean? But I know it goes beyond just trying to sell it. And he feels like he's got to make the best like football decision and all that.
I think there is one pass rusher that is that dude in this draft, and that's obviously Abdul Carter out of Penn State. The fact that they are so, and if the speculation is true, and they really are locked on JalonWalker as like the ideal option there because of his versatility, it kind of tells me that at least so far, and obviously there's interviews and private workouts and even the combine still to come, they don't see a lot of difference in that second tier of like James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, Mike Green out of Marshall, Nick Scorton out of A&M. And so that makes it like hard to feel like you've got to stay locked into number 8. And maybe he looks at those dudes and none of those dudes fit that definition of that's the sexy selling point going forward of the Panthers defense. I mean, I would argue, I would argue Brian Burns was never really the sexy selling point of this defense. Maybe he was the sexiest piece, but it wasn't a particularly sexy unit.
Well, I was excited about that pick, partially because I watched the pick, and also because like of his versatility, but knowing what a capable pass rusher he was as well. So for me, I was like thrilled. I was like, great, yes, we are here, we are doing this. Like, we're going to get after it. And he played well, and he did his thing. But like I hear you on the rest of it. I don't know. It's just, for me, it's like, okay, just trade down then. Like, please don't draft someone that you didn't have to draft at that spot. Like, that's the other part too. That was the part about the Brooks pick too, for me, where I was like, who was going to draft him there? Like, why did you even why? That's the thing too. It's like, why did you do that? Just trade down if you want him so bad. No one was maybe third. People would have been like, we got to have this. Like, okay, he's fallen too far. Maybe fourth. But like, that's even pushing it. Like, second, like, you could have waited, my guy. Like, or I don't even remember if they had third round picks. Who the hell knows, right? But like, it's like you could have traded down. Like, if you really wanted him that bad. Like, it's just, it's mind boggling. Just think about all the other players they could have gotten.
Yeah. I think third was the first of their picks that actually belonged to them that they had, if I remember. Oh, no, because they traded up from 33 to 32 for XL. But I'm pretty sure they had a third. Anyway, before we go today, I do want to ask you about NFL news that probably doesn't affect the Panthers, because we have seen 2 coaches afraid to break little Bryce's body. Where do you stand on the idea of banning the TushPush in the NFL?
I mean, I know I'm supposed to, I guess, but I don't really have particularly strong feelings about it. Like, I really don't. Like, I remember even the Bush push, people were like outraged about, like,
Yeah.
and I just didn't really move me one way or the other because, like, I don't know. It's just like anything else. Like, teams will try anything they can within the rules as long as it's allowed to like score and until you figure out a way to stop it or they make a rule against it. It's one of the two. But it just feels also like, I think it's almost like they feel like the play is what's bad, but it's also like, also the reason it works so well is because you have like 800 pounds of like offensive line, probably from just like two of them coming directly at your face. Like that is part of what's, you know what I mean? Like they're getting an initial push and like, yes, he's getting a push behind, but like not most teams don't have that. Like most teams do not have that combo of people. So I don't think the play itself has been determined to be like unfair necessarily. I think it's just like, oh, is Philly's O-line unfair? Like, okay, so then everybody else get better. I don't know.
That's the only reason that I have a problem with banning it. I'm like you, like it doesn't move me one way or the other, but this strikes me as,
primal, right?
Yeah. Oh, of what?
Of like cry more,
Yeah, for sure. Like I was gonna say, this strikes me as like one little league team can't use their best player to pitch because the other parents in the league have decided it's not fair. He knows how to throw a curveball, right? Like at the end of the day, it is a football play.
It might be a little different. But...
Well, tell me why. I mean, like at the end of the day, it is like
because they're children.
Sure, but like this is to me. Like that is a baseball pitch, right? This is at its most primal level, a football play. This is a play that looks more like original football than anything else we do in the NFL. How can you ban it?
I mean, I guess like technically, I guess what they say, right, is that like it's more like rugby, I guess, because like you're essentially pushing a person instead of like blocking for the ball. That's the best argument I've heard against it, but it's also like, okay, so what are we doing with QB sneaks then? Are we tweaking those completely? Like, where are we going with this?
Right. And at what point do you say that it's if you're the team running the tush push? At what point does a referee stop believing that it's just a quarterback sneak? It's just the way we happen to line up for the quarterback sneak.
Yeah, do we really want to start putting more things in the discretion of the referees? Because I, for one, do not. But I think it's maybe the better analogy is like the Wilt Chamberlain, like the dunking thing when they outlawed dunking because like he could dunk and people were mad about it. And they were like, you shouldn't be allowed to dunk because white people can't or whatever the reason was. Like,
I think at some point, what I want out of football is, and not all the time, but in moments like this, what I want out of football is what, who was the wrestler's name? Shelton Benjamin, that said that Vince McMahon used to tell him that what people like out of wrestling is big, meaty men slapping meat. That
comes up all the time in football context, that clip. Yeah. Because I don't know who that is, but whenever it comes up, I'm always like, yep.
All right, well,
and that's what that play is, like
the meatiest.
I don't know,
slapping the most meat.